So Arun Nandi from Unilever. I lead data and analytics, and I'll just start off with a very quick introduction about myself. I've been with Unilever for a number of years in many countries. I've had the pleasure of managing some of our famous brands. There was a question earlier this morning about how weather affects sales, I think to one of my fellow speakers. I remember this one interesting anecdote that I wanted to share here. So I'll repeat it again, but cloud cover has a stronger correlation to ice cream sales than does precipitation or temperature. Yeah, so let me say that again. Cloud cover actually has a higher correlation to ice cream sales than does temperature or precipitation. We've done the math on it, and I thought it was interesting to just share. But managed a couple of ice cream brands in the US, and for the past 7 years or so, I first helped found and now lead the data and analytics practice, including some of the scope that's been added for me with the Americas, with Latin America as well. Yeah. So today, over the next 10 minutes or so, I'm just going to go through a little bit of the evolution of what we've done in the geospatial analytics space in consumer goods. And we've done a lot of great work across different markets. So you'll see a quick overview of some of those use cases across the years. Yeah. So we started this journey many years ago, 2010. I was part of the team in India at the time when we were on a mission to add 1 million outlets or stores to our direct coverage. Yeah. So it's a large endeavor, something in developing economies like India, Indonesia, Vietnam, etc., where large private sector organizations such as us who enjoy a large market share have the ability to do, because we have great distributor networks. We have a great legacy of having existed in these countries for over 70 years. And we took this upon ourselves to use these small handheld devices. I don't know who remembers these resistive touch handheld devices. Anybody? Those ones where you needed a stylus, or if you lose your stylus, you have to use the edges of your nails to get a click in. So those handheld devices are what we used, along with obviously a SIM card, to map 1 million stores in India, right? And since then, we've obviously expanded this scope to many other distributive trade markets, and are now in the third generation of some of our analytics solutions that exist on that as a layer that recommend everything from availability, visibility, portfolio assortment, optimization, etc. Yeah. So the real birth of geospatial analytics, as we see it, happened with that, with what we called at that time a perfect store. We wanted to see what a perfect store could be like. How can you recommend to the salesperson, to the merchandiser, how to make every single store perfect based on the data that we're gathering, right? A few years later, we addressed a similar but very different use case here in the US. Many of us have heard of the term food deserts. The speaker before me spoke about Albertsons. We're in a moment in time when everyone who's read the news knows that a couple of big grocery chains in the country are looking to merge as well. So we were looking at the supermarkets or the grocery channel in the US, right? So all the stores that are within that. And where do you see gaps within these where populations do exist, thrive, and live, right? And a lot of these gaps were actually not in the white spaces that you see here. The gaps were really, because that's the gaps that you see here in coverage are places where people don't actually live, not a lot of population density in those places. But the gaps are really in urban agglomerations, right? So this is in large cities. And if you look at independent supermarkets, there is 50,000 of them, of which a large majority of them are in New York and some of the big cities in the US. Yeah? So an independent supermarket store could be, if you live in the city, something like a chain of a few stores, like a C-Town on the Upper East Side. You may have been familiar with it. Or could be a large deli or bodega where you can buy anything from milk to eggs to bread to other products as well, right? How do you serve these stores, these independent supermarkets? And when we started layering in data of demographics, of socio-economic factors, variables, et cetera, we've started recognizing that obviously these are the underprivileged, underserved populations that live in these food deserts, right? So the cost to serve is higher for a lot of organizations, for a lot of retail chains in the country. The cost to serve is larger for many other suppliers as well to go there directly. And we made an effort to overinvest in this channel because we started understanding that the baseline for how much do you see as the sales for a zip code for 100,000 people was established, and we saw that there were some which were significantly under-indexed on that. So identifying micro opportunities to serve our communities and also identifying those micro opportunities for growth. So early in the pandemic, right? So fast forward a few years, a fellow speaker of mine spoke about the early days of the pandemic and how that affected, shutdowns, different levels of shutdowns in different countries, different cities, et cetera, how that affected markets, right? In some of our countries as well, we had severe lockdowns which were imposed by governments. What that meant was that we could not get products into our customers, which are a lot of the smaller stores in distributive trade markets and large chains in retail markets, in organized retail markets. And our consumers still needed those products, right? So these are products that people use on a day-to-day basis, shampoos, conditioners, bath soaps, et cetera, right, and home care products. So what we've done in a few different markets, this is an example of something that we ran in a couple of Southeast Asian countries, in South Asia, as well as in a few countries in Latin America, where we partnered with the government agencies to allow our distributors an ability to circumvent the lockdowns that were in place because these were essential goods that we were providing. And we created a model where we could establish where our key distributor points were, which could then send out individuals to serve those stores directly, right? So this is essentially a model that we put together in 4 weeks' time because we knew that stocks were completely exhausted at most of these stores, and we knew that products still needed to go out, but there wasn't any way for it to do that with the lockdowns in place. Yeah? So this is a good example of how we brought that really to life. And then now in the post-pandemic world, we are exploring opportunities of a different nature within the geospatial space. So one of the use cases that we are working on is in Ecuador. And we started with identifying what the problem statement is. So essentially, problem statement is, if folks here are familiar with Quito in Ecuador, it's in a valley which is surrounded by volcanic mountains, right? And essentially what we wanted to do is we wanted to see where our stores are today, right? And there's different distributor networks which service different business units today. And we wanted to identify what are those cross-sell opportunities, right? So bringing it to life. So think about a laundromat in Quito, Ecuador, which has the ability to sell ice cream, but is not the right fit to sell shampoo. Yeah? Think of a salon, a little nail parlor or a salon in the same place, which has the ability to sell shampoo and conditioner, but not an ice cream freezer that can be put out there, right? So our models needed to be sophisticated enough where they needed to learn which stores you will be able to supply some of these products to, and where you're able to realize those cross-sell opportunities. And the spatial aspect comes into play because we started recognizing when we started working with the data that as you go higher in altitude, you see that this store serves as a one-size-fits-all, right? So this is a store that sells everything from gasoline in containers to all of the other products that you needed to buy, right? So you needed your models to be able to learn which are the recommendations for cross-selling opportunities that are going to work and which are the ones that won't, right? And that's obviously an iterative process. And the future use cases that we started exploring from that is other route-to-market use cases such as distributor locations. Where do you place distributors? And what are the optimal points in which you place them in order for you to realize the least amount of windshield time or travel time for salespeople, for merchandisers, et cetera. And where in this world of increased gas prices, petrol prices in different parts of the globe, where you can see a reduction in that cost as well, which again goes back to working capital for the small and medium-sized entrepreneurs that run these businesses for us as customers, right? So this is a quick example of how we brought this product from a concept into a fully developed solution over this time period. As you can see, there was quite a bit of work that was done. I had a lot of these questions, which I'd populated on the slide and removed it at the last minute because I thought it was too many. But essentially, typical questions that everyone here is familiar with, that you ask your businesses, right? Right from upstream, which is, where is the data today? What data sets do you need to join? How do you sort of deal with the data accuracy challenges, which other speakers here spoke about, right? We've used our own methodologies, which involve fuzzy logic and neural networks to increase and improve some of the data accuracies in some of those cases, to more downstream questions, business questions, like what incentive mechanisms do you need to create for the salespeople in order to get them to execute the recommendations that your model is throwing out, right? So in my team, as data and analytics professionals, our job does not stop when the output of the model stops. We're actually responsible for delivering value through that. So everything related to change management, feedback, and tracking all comes under what we want to drive as organizational value. So top and bottom line value for the organization. And in this example, we were able to drive a multi-million-dollar top line increase from this cross-sell experiment, which became a product which is now being launched in multiple other markets. Yeah. So I'll end with this slide. I'm surprised that I'm the first person that actually put this slide up. This is an artist render of the number of satellites that are circling our globe today. And heard a lot of great talks today about what we're doing together, and haven't had an opportunity today to touch upon sustainable sourcing that we're working on, which is available for anybody interested to go on our corporate website and find out about the work that we're doing with Google, about deforestation that we're working on in Indonesia, in Brazil, etc. Our commitment is to our communities as much as it is to the industry, our shareholders, etc. And we really want to do a lot more here. So this is an invitation for us to collaborate. So we're open to collaborating with different partners. I think other panelists in a panel before us spoke about this. How can we work together as a community to do better for our businesses, for our communities, and for the world, right? Thank you.